The utilization window can be opened from three different methods. You can either click on this button here in the toolbar, you can come here in the View Utilization Window, or you can hit Ctrl Shift and I. It's a window that consolidates schedule information in a time bucket concept. So between every line here, every gauge line, it is a time bucket. So it consolidates the schedule data into four different parameters basically: unavailable, setup, working, and idle. There are two ways to visualize the utilization, either from here, which is a new tab and a new window, and when this window is activated, you can come to view here and you have three different options dedicated to the utilization window. Those three different options, they are also available from the right-click menu here. Also, the utilization window is available in the overview menu. In the top left arrow, you click on it, came to add pane, and then you change it to be utilization. This is the way that I prefer the best because the gauge lines can match and you can clearly see the information being consolidated from the schedule. And also all of those functions, right-click menu is also available from this screen. So I'm gonna close this one over here. So for you to understand how it consolidates the data, I already have a schedule here in the profiling machine, right? But before going into this detail, I want to talk about those options available here at the right-click menu. So the first one is the configure utilization, where it allows you to select, to add and remove rows. So you can add and remove resource groups, resources, and secondary constraint. So for example, if I want to add all of those four secondary constraints, you can either check each one of them individually and then click on OK, or you can select the first one, hold your Shift key, select the last one, it's gonna select all items in between, and now if you click on any checkbox, it's gonna enable and disable all of them altogether. Ctrl A also select all of them. So I'm gonna select one secondary constraint here and one resource group, just for you to understand the difference here in the system. So for example, this resource group has, which is assembly and testing. You can see it's a resource group by this icon here. This is the icon for a resource, and this is the icon for a secondary constraint. Let me uncheck those options now. And I want to keep only two resources here, the profiling 01 and the external resource. Okay, let me also compress Gantt chart so we only see profiling 01 and external resource. Okay, so you see here that those gauge lines, they are matching, right? So the time bucket here is exactly the time bucket in here. You can change that at the right-click bucket settings. You see that the current parameter is as displayed, but you can change that to hours, days, or weeks. So for example, if I select days and 2 days, I can leave the 7 hours in the reference date. So now my bucket settings is set to be 2 days in the utilization window, and but it's still 1 day at the Gantt chart. Okay. Of course, if you change the reference time here, now you have a different reference, a start time for the time bucket that will also change. Let's come back to as display. Okay, so another option here is the set utilization mode. You can either see the duration information in hours or the percentage, right? So it's up to you to decide what you want to see. I personally prefer in hours. So the calculation is pretty simple. Instead of being a Gantt chart, it's going to consolidate the schedule using those 4 different parameters. You can check each one of those parameters if you left click a resource on a time bucket. So for example, if I left click here, I'm gonna check the parameters information for profiling 01 at this time bucket over here. So you see that this is the time for the time bucket, this is the resource, and those are the 4 parameters that I spoke about. So the calculation is pretty simple. In this case, I have 100% utilization because I have 10 hours of setup time and 14 hours of process time. If I drag and drop this operation to be a little bit, the delay of it to be a little bit later than 7 a.m., you see that I still have 10 hours of setup time because all of my setup time here is inside this time bucket. I have now only 8 hours of process time because only 8 hours of process time is inside this time bucket. And I have 6 hours of unavailable time here, of idle time here because there is nothing scheduling here. So that's telling me that I have an outstanding capacity of 6 hours that can be utilized for something else. If I left click, I'm gonna have this detail in here again. Keep in mind that utilization, it only counts working time. It doesn't count setup time as part of the utilization, okay? So for example, if I drag and drop this operation for, let's say, close to half the setup time to be inside this time bucket, you see that it does the calculation accordingly. And now the rest of my setup time is at the next time bucket over here. So if you keep doing this, you see that the calculation is done automatically. Okay, so here, this external resource, it is an infinite resource. That means it can process multiple operations in parallel. In this case, I have 2 operations of 24 hours each, and they are scheduled in parallel. So the way that Opcenter displays this information in the utilization window is by drawing this red dotted line to mark the 100% utilization. So my time bucket is still 24 hours. So anything that is scheduled after that 24 hours, you're gonna see in that yellow section over here, okay? So I have 24 of standard utilization and another 24 hours because I have 2 operations in parallel here. So let me simulate here a reduction of, to be instead of 1 day, to be 12 hours of process time for one. So you see that I still have 24 hours of utilization, but now I only have 12 hours of overutilization. Okay, I hope that is clear. There is another functionality in the right-click option here that you can print this. So if you come here, it opens the print properties and it's going to generate a PDF. I'm gonna talk about this a little bit better in a different video, so I'm gonna save this for that video. Another option that you have is copy and copy all. They are pretty much the same. The difference is the copy will copy only the data for this resource, and the copy all will copy the data for all resources that are currently available here in my utilization. So right now I only have profiling 01 and external. So copy all will only copy the data for those 2. Let's do that, and now you can paste this information into an Excel file. So if I filter the data, you're gonna see that I have those 2 resources available here. And every row, it's going to be a time bucket. So you see 25 until 26, 26 until 27, 27 until 28, and so on and so forth. And those 4 parameters, they are in here, working, setup, unavailable, and idle. The total is essentially the time bucket total, and the utilization, it is the working, the amount of working time. So let's take a look at the working here, at the external resource. So you see that even for when it's extrapolate the maximum time bucket, it still show you that the utilization is the working time. Okay, close this one right now. So let me now select another resource group here. I'm going to select a resource group called factory, this one over here, and I'm going to unflag those, and I will flag all the factory resources, which are all of those. So when you select a resource group that contains multiple resources, so in this case, the factory resource group contains the profiling, spiraling 1 and 2, armoring 1, extrusion 1, and isolation 1. So the consolidation of this is done for all of those resources. So you see here that I have, for the profiling one, 6 hours of working and 18 hours of not working. But the factory row, factory utilization row, contains also 6 hours of utilization only, but my total hours is 144 hours, because if you multiply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 24, you're gonna have 144 hours, sorry. This is the same for this screen here. You see that I have 10 hours here of setup time and 14 hours of process time, and everything else is idle time. So this is consolidated into this group. Let's now schedule another operation here. So you see that now I have my extrusion here scheduled as well. So 6 hours plus 18 hours gives you 24 hours of utilization. And these 120 hours are the sum of all idle times. Okay? So this is important to understand and can be very useful if you have a work center with multiple machines and you want to check the utilization data for that machine. All you need to do, you need to create a resource group, and then the data will be exported in the way that you want it to be. One last information here is regarding the unavailable time. So you see that this time bucket here, 24 hours of it, or 144 for the factory resource group, it's all of it unavailable time. But let me change the bucket settings to be 3 days, for example. So you see that now this time bucket, it contains 3 days, right? 72 hours. And now it's showing that 48 hours is unavailable because of this off shift, right? And 24 hours is the available time because it's consolidating by 3 days, okay? And this is available time. But if you have, for example here, let me change this to be on shift, but instead of being 100% efficiency, let me put it to 75% efficiency. Now, because of this change in the profiling one machine, you see that for 24 hours of available time, I'm losing 6 hours due to performance loss, so which is 25% of 24 hours. And 75% is idle here, so I have capacity of 18 hours between those 24 hours time bucket. What I'm trying to show you is that efficiencies are also part of the calculation, not just off shift as for here at the weekend. Okay, and that's it for this video. Thank you.